sharing this talk down there, and when the man, one of the people, he saw the title for the talk, and he came up to me and he said, "What would you have titled it if Hillary had won the election?" I said I would have called it Hillary Clinton, Rome's Perfect Woman. You say that's impossible. That's impossible because Donald Trump took the exact opposite positions that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have taken. Well, folks, does the papacy only control one side? No. No.
Thesis, antithesis.
Thesis, antithesis. Now that's Cindy from Sandy's husband, isn't it?
Yeah, Jim.
Jim. Thank you, Jim.
Hegelian dialectic.
The Hegelian dialectic. You take the pendulum all the way out there, and then you swing it back to the other side. And it creates confusion and chaos until the people cry out for a solution. And the powers that be, the papacy, comes forward and says, "I have just the answer for your troubles." And what will that answer be? Sunday, Mark. That's right, Sunday. Folks, Donald Trump is not only mentioned here by being a king of the earth, but Revelation 18:11-15 talks about the merchants of the earth, the great power brokers, the wealthy of the world. And the Bible says the merchants of these things which were made rich by her. So Donald Trump is connected to the papacy and is subservient to Rome through politics as well as through business. That's what the Bible teaches. The Bible doesn't say that Donald Trump is a parallel to Oliver Cromwell, one of the greatest Protestants that ever lived. It doesn't say that. These two people that were at sword points, they're actually very good friends. But CNN didn't tell you that, did they? And the Oregonian didn't either. Or the Portland, whatever the paper's called, didn't tell you that either, did they? So folk, who is telling the truth? Is it the media or is it the Bible? What are we going to use to be our compass to set our direction to go into the heavenly kingdom? Will it be CNN? Are they going to give us the answers? No, friends, they're not going to give us the truth. John Swinton, all the way back in the 1950s, he was the editor of the New York Times. He said, "There is no such thing in our world today as an independent press." He said, "We, the journalists, are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. They pull the strings and we dance." And then he said, "We are intellectual prostitutes." Folks, the people that are telling us about how Donald Trump is so different from Hillary, no, folk, they're from the exact same cloth. They're just coming at the situation from a different direction. Donald Trump gave donations to the Clintons, and both Bill and Hillary attended his wedding to Melania back in January of 2005. According to Trump, he and Bill have golfed together while discussing private matters. Why not? Bill Clinton was Jesuit trained by the order at its Georgetown University. Did you know that Donald Trump was trained at a Jesuit university as well? Folk, you know, this idea, I remember, this was probably 7-8 years ago. There was a group in Loma Linda that wanted me to do a little mini-series in Arizona. They were doing some evangelism there. I said, fine, I'd be happy to. got me a ticket, my rent-a-car, my motel, everything was lined up, all paid for. About 5 days before I was going to leave, the guy called me and he said, "Bill, we're going to have to cancel you." I said, "Oh, really? Why is that?" He said, "Because one of the people that were involved in our team to do this evangelism in Arizona called the Biblical Research Institute at the General Conference and said, 'Do you know anything about this Bill Hughes guy?' And the Biblical Research Institute at the General Conference said, 'Don't listen to a word he says. Hughes is so crazy, he even believes that Bill Clinton is being influenced by the Jesuits.'" What? He was trained. He was educated by the Jesuit order. And are we going to step back and say that had no influence over NAFTA and many of his other policies? Folk, it had huge influence. The Jesuits were in the White House telling Clinton what to do, just as they're telling Donald Trump what to do. Now, the Hegelian dialectic is played out by an organization in the United States called the Council on Foreign Relations. Because after World War I, when Woodrow Wilson failed to get America into the League of Nations, the Jesuits determined that they would control both political parties in America. And so they created the Council on Foreign Relations. And the Council on Foreign Relations would control America's finance, government, industry, religion, education, and press. No one could be elected to the presidency of the United States without the council's consent. The office would be a tool for the Archbishop of New York, subject to the Vicar of Christ in Rome. There's only one man that has ever bucked the Council on Foreign Relations: John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was put in by the CFR and the Vatican in 1960. But folk, after the Bay of Pigs and John F. Kennedy pulling American troops out of Vietnam and returning America to a gold standard, Kennedy was done. He was toast. So folk, nobody has bucked the Jesuit order through this powerful organization called the CFR. And it's through the CFR that the Jesuits control the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And nobody gets into the White House unless the Jesuits say, okay. Nobody. Here are some politicians that have been recorded to be CFR members. Notice a few of them: Herbert Hoover, Richard Nixon, Dwight Eisenhower, Hubert Humphrey, John F. Kennedy, Gerald Ford, Nelson Rockefeller, John Foster Dulles, Walter Mondale, Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush, Dick Cheney, William J. Clinton, Henry A. Kissinger, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Caspar Weinberger, Donald Rumsfeld, just to name a few. Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Controlled by the Jesuits through the Council on Foreign Relations. This is the man that was used by the Jesuits to create the CFR and to gain control of the politics, religion, business, industry, and education in America. His name was Edward Mandell House. Woodrow Wilson called him my second self because he actually ruled America during the Wilson years. It was not Woodrow Wilson. It was Edward Mandell House. And while Woodrow Wilson in 1916 was going up for re-election and telling the American people, vote for me because I've kept you out of the war, Edward Mandell House was over in Europe trying to agitate things so that America would get into the war. Well, it's all smoke screens. It's all smoke screens. Donald Trump has declared that if he's elected president, his foreign policy advisor will be Richard Hughes, president of the CFR for the last 14 years. That's who's going to run Donald Trump's foreign policies. A member of the president of the CFR, tightly connected to the Jesuit order. You know, some people are having a real hard time with the fact that Donald Trump is an outsider and he's become president, but he's holding an awful lot of conversations about policies with this guy right here, who is as connected to the, what do we call it, the industrial complex of anybody in this country. Henry Kissinger. How is it that Donald Trump, a populist, somebody who has come out of nowhere to become president, why is he rubbing shoulders with these people? Because they're working for the same group. Same group, friends. If Trump were president, certain appointed CFR members would be directing his actions and making his policies. The Jesuits would be running the White House. Not to be outdone, Donald sent his son Eric Trump. Donald Trump was educated at Fordham University in New York. Fordham University is a Jesuit institution. It's one of the 3 most powerful Jesuit universities in America. Georgetown and Xavier would probably be your top 2. But Fordham is right up there. That's where Donald Trump went for 2 years of college, folks. Are we going to be so gullible to think that that hasn't influenced him? And that he doesn't understand their power? Donald Trump, obviously he was impressed by what happened at Fordham. He sent his own son, Eric, to Georgetown University. That's where his son graduated from its McDonough School of Business in 2006. Obviously, Donald Trump saw something at Fordham that he liked, or he wouldn't have sent his son and paid all that money to go to a private institution, would he? I guess it would be fair to ask at this point, as we're thinking about Donald Trump in the light of Oliver Cromwell, do you think Oliver Cromwell would have sent his children to a Jesuit institution? Never, Marilyn. Never. How about Neil Gorsuch, Supreme Court Justice? One of Donald Trump's first triumphs to get him onto the United States Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch went to Georgetown Preparatory School. It is an American Jesuit college preparatory school for boys grades 9 through 12. It's among the most selective prep schools. Obviously, Rome saw something in this man, that they realized they could train him and he would do exactly as he is told. It's a selective prep school, the only Jesuit boarding school in the country. It's located in the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Washington on 90 acres in the suburban community of North Bethesda, Montgomery County, Maryland, outside of the District of Columbia. You see, nobody told us in the press when Neil Gorsuch was up for appointment. Nobody told us where he was trained, did they? No, we didn't know anything about that. Now, folk, there seems to be some ignorance because the Jesuit order so camouflages, so hides what they do. I know I've talked to people, I've mentioned to them about one of my books and about the subject matter, and they will say, oh, the Jesuits, they're such intelligent, loving people. Well, folk, the reality is far different. Great Controversy, page 234, it says, throughout Christendom, Protestantism was menaced by formidable foes. The first triumphs of the Reformation passed. This is right about 1530, 1535. Rome summoned new forces, hoping to accomplish its destruction. So how would they destroy the Protestant Reformation? At this time, the order of the Jesuits was created the most cruel, unscrupulous, and powerful of all the champions of popery. Cut off from earthly ties and human interests, dead to the claims of natural affection, reason and conscience wholly silenced. They knew no rule, no tie but that of their order, and no duty but to extend its power. Now, folks, think about this for a minute. Cruel, unscrupulous, powerful. And we're teaching Seventh-day Adventist leaders for the last 16 years in the techniques of the Jesuits? Have we lost our mind? Have we lost our mind? Spiritual formation is a derivative of the spiritual exercises of Ignatius Loyola. And we sit at the feet of ministers that have had spiritual formation, that are obedient slaves to the Pope? What are we doing, friends? Are they going to lead us to love the truth as it is in Christ Jesus? That's insanity. That's insanity. They're going to do everything they can to destroy every bastion of Protestant liberty that's left. That's what they're going to do. You think about it. Like I said to you this morning, I turn on 3ABN that one Sabbath morning. I'm listening. The King James Version's not used. What? These are famous pastors in Seventh-day Adventism, famous men. New King James, NIV, Good News Bible, and then the guy from Pioneer in Andrews. That was atrocious. Where is that coming from, folk? Where is that coming from? If the Protestant Bible that the Jesuit order in 1825, I quoted in my book, The Secret Terrorist, the Jesuit order in 1825 said, we will destroy the Protestant Bible. They know what the Protestant Bible is. Amen. They know it's the King James Version, and they said, we will destroy it. So how do you destroy it? You create 300 new versions. And you create confusion.
Yeah.
And we sit and listen to that. I could listen to those men on 3ABN for 5 minutes, and I said, I can't listen to any more. I cannot listen to the New King James, the NIV, and all these other garbage translations that come straight from Rome.
Amen.
How do we do that, folk? How do we do that? What we're doing is we're sitting and listening to somebody that's got a dagger behind their back and they're saying, give me time and I'm going to put this right through your heart. That's where they're going with it, friends. These people mean business. They know exactly what they're doing. And it's in Adventism today. They know exactly what they're doing. They want to destroy you and me. And one way they're doing it is through all these multiple translations of Scripture that create total confusion. And then where do we have to go, Bud and Donnell, to get something that declares the beauty of the King James Bible in comparison to all these other garbage translations? Where do we go?
Baptist.
We go to the Baptists. We go to the Baptists. Unbelievable.
Amen.
Unbelievable. To combat these forces, Jesuitism inspired its followers with a fanaticism that enabled them to endure like dangers to oppose the power of truth, all the weapons of deception. There was no crime too great for them to commit. No deception too base for them to practice. No disguise too difficult for them to assume. You mean they could create this illusion that America is now saved because we've got somebody coming in outside of the political beltway of Washington, D.C., and he's going to make a difference? He's going to make America great again? We could trick America into believing that. Do you think they could do that, friends?
Yeah, they do.
And they're doing it.
Yes.
They're doing it. They're even doing it to Seventh-day Adventists, self-supporting Seventh-day Adventists, who somehow think that Donald Trump is an Oliver Cromwell look-alike. Vowed to perpetual poverty and humility, it was their studied aim to secure wealth and power, to be devoted to the overthrow of Protestantism and the reestablishment of the papal supremacy. So tell me now, when was the last time in a Seventh-day Adventist church you heard the voice of protest? When was the last time you heard that? Oh no, we don't hear that anymore because that's not politically correct. That steps on people's toes. That makes them uncomfortable. So I'll ask you again. When was the last time you heard the voice of protest in a Seventh-day Adventist church? When was it, friend? 10 years ago? 20 years ago? 50 years ago? Why is that, friend? Because contrary to what Ted Wilson said, the Jesuit orders, number one church that they would want to destroy at this time in Earth's history is Seventh-day Adventism. Now, how Ted Wilson could answer a letter from a gentleman in South America who said, "Are there Jesuits that have infiltrated into the Adventist church?" And his response was, "Of course not. The Jesuits, they have a completely different mission than we do as a Seventh-day Adventist church. They have nothing to do with us." Are you kidding me?
Yeah. They marry our young girls.
Are you kidding me? The last Protestant church to finish with the three angels' messages to the whole world to usher in Christ's coming, and the Jesuits are going to say, "Oh, we'll just leave them alone. We don't have anything to do with them." Folk, in all respect, that's crazy. That's crazy. And you can tell Ted Wilson that. Elder Wilson, that's nuts.
Amen.
The overthrow of Protestantism and the reestablishment of the papal supremacy. So who's on the rise in Seventh-day Adventism today? If it's not Protestantism, what is it? It's Romanism. It's the exaltation of people. It's looking to men in the place of God. It's saying, oh, the minister, he has all the answers. We can trust him. This is an Adventist church. He would not lie to us. So we look to men. We look to men. And Rome controls those men through spiritual formation, and through their apostasy, they seek to deceive and destroy you. That's what it says, friend. The reestablishment of papal supremacy everywhere. The Bible says that Rome controls Trump as it does Clinton and most politicians. Not most, all. Well, Ellen White does say there still are a few people through whom the Lord is working. The CFR, controlled by the Jesuits, controls both political parties in America. Trump was educated and has had one of his sons educated by the Jesuits. He has promised to do their bidding. He is Rome's perfect man. Now, this is from Breitbart. This is an interesting statement here. You know, during the election that Pope Francis and Donald Trump locked horns over the building of a wall between America and Mexico. Well, from this article, Pope Francis has changed his position. And Donald Trump, who had guaranteed that he would never go and meet the Pope in Rome, at the end of this month, guess where he's going?
Yes.
Yeah, he's going to Rome, friends. There's a G7 summit in May, and while he is over there in that part of the world, Donald Trump is going to visit with Pope Francis. And according to Revelation 17, who's going to be doing most of the talking? Contrary to earlier reports, President Trump will meet with Pope Francis when he travels to Italy next month for meetings with the G7 leaders, U.S. and Vatican officials said Wednesday. Revelation 13 says that the lamb-like beast would tell all the world to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Are we going to think that Donald Trump is not a part of that process of fulfilling those passages? When asked about a possible meeting, White House press spokesman Sean Spicer told reporters that officials would be contacting the Vatican to arrange a meeting between Trump and the Pope during the latter's visit to Italy at the end of May. We'd be honored to have an audience. Does that sound like somebody that's Oliver Cromwell? The Vatican equivalent of the Deputy Prime Minister confirmed to the news agency that Pope Francis is always ready to receive heads of state who request an audience. I'm sure he is. In last November's election, Catholics voted for Donald Trump by a substantial margin over Hillary Clinton, with 52% voting for Mr. Trump, only 45% for Mrs. Clinton. The victory for Trump among Catholics represented a significant 5% shift away from the Democratic Party in the 4 years since 2012. Among Christians who regularly attend services, the divide was still greater. Weekly churchgoers voting for Trump at a margin of 56% over 40% for Clinton. Let's see here, U.S. and Vatican, despite a dust-up between Francis and then presidential candidate Donald Trump last year over the question of the U.S.-Mexican border wall, the two men share common ground on a large range of issues. Both leaders oppose abortion and euthanasia, defend the religious liberty. And conscientious objection, emphasize job creation, support the traditional family, and have spoken out strongly in defense of persecuted Christians in the Middle East and elsewhere. Even on the question of immigration, Pope Francis later walked back earlier statements, asserting in January that every country has the right to control its borders, especially where the risk of terrorism exists. Woodrow Wilson was the first president to ever travel to Italy, seeing Benedict XV during his visit to the country in 1919. Folks, do you realize that in 1867, after the Civil War, it was so obvious to the American politicians because everybody that was tried for the conspiracy murder of Lincoln, 5 out of the 8 were Catholics, and the other 3 were a part of secret societies. John Wilkes Booth was not a Catholic, but he was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, which was a secret Roman Catholic secret society. So all of them, friends, all 8 conspirators had connections to the papacy. The United States government realized that, and in 1867, they cut off all diplomatic ties with the Vatican. And that continued, friends, for the next 117 years. 1984, Ronald Reagan appointed a man to be an ambassador to the Vatican. 1984. Has Rome changed? No, Rome hasn't changed, friends. We've changed. America has changed. Why? Because the Jesuits have taken control of this country through the CFR. With Donald Trump's campaign losing ground among independent voters, this was back in the August of last year before the election. Trump tripled down with the one base of political support that has steadfastly remained with him, white evangelical voters, by promising to dismantle the laws that separate church and state in America. Now, folks, that's an attack on the First Amendment, and when that wall is broken down, that's a precursor to Sunday. Donald Trump, friend, is not somebody coming in from the outside that's going to make America great again. Donald Trump's coming in secretly to appear to be coming from the outside, but he is a Vatican insider, and he will do just what Rome tells him to do. Trump told the pastors that evangelical voters would make the difference in key battleground states like Florida, Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And if white evangelical Christians put him in the White House, he promised to return the favor. You have a chance to do something that will be earth-shaking, he said. I mean it, earth-shaking. You've got to get your people out to vote. Donald Trump won the electoral vote by about 70 electoral votes. Florida was 29. Ohio is 18. That's 47. Pennsylvania was 20. This was the difference in the election. These 3 swing states. And it was the white evangelical vote that won the election for Donald Trump. And he promised them, if you put me in, I'll dismantle the church and state in America. Now, does that sound like Oliver Cromwell to you? Not hardly. Donald Trump went to Fordham University, a Jesuit school in the Bronx, for 2 years, then transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. But clearly, friend, in his time at Fordham University, Donald Trump learned all he needed to know from the Jesuit order. And they have kept note of him all these years, and they placed him in the White House. Donald Trump wrote a letter to Roman Catholics in Denver. He couldn't meet an appointment. He said, "If I be elected president, I look forward to working with these two respected leaders of the Catholic Church in America, their brother bishops and Congress, on issues of critical importance to the Catholic Church and Catholics. Catholics in the United States of America are a rich part of our nation's history." Rome has sought to destroy America from its beginning. It was during the Civil War in 1863 that the Archbishop of New York, a man by the name of John Hughes, he told the Roman Catholics of New York to just tear up the New York City. And so when the Catholics started tearing up New York City and rioting, President Lincoln sent a letter to Archbishop Hughes, and he said, "If you don't stop those people," he said, "I will hold you personally responsible for these riots." And so John Hughes went out on his balcony, and he had all the Catholics down there below him, and he said, "Now you guys go home and have a quiet dinner and go to bed." And the riot was over. The reason Archbishop Hughes had the riots in New York was because National Guard troops who were needed in Gettysburg in July of 1863 had to leave that battlefield to put down the fires in New York City. Folks, Donald Trump, and I say it in all respect, but for him to say they have a rich part of our nation's history, that is a total lie. A total lie. The United States was and is strengthened through Catholic men, women, priests, and religious sisters. They have enslaved and abused children. That movie Spotlight, where it talks about how in Boston, that's a true story, friends, how these priests in Massachusetts have abused, sexually molested and abused so many children, destroyed their lives.
And nuns.
And, oh yeah, and nuns too, Marilyn, absolutely. And in one part of this film, there's a lawyer, he is scared to death to disclose the information that he knew about these immoral priests and nuns. And this reporter says, just tell me what you know. And the lawyer looks at him and he says, "The church runs everything." And we sit back, and somebody writes a book like The Secret Terrorist, and we say, "Oh, that guy's he's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about." Oh, friends, and then Spotlight comes along and says, the church controls everything. Everything. Maybe we ought to dust off our great controversies and pull them out and realize the power that ruled in the Dark Ages has been resurrected again. "I will be there for you. I will stand with you. I will fight for you," Trump declared. Rome controls both sides, the Hegelian dialectic, the Democratic extremes, and the Republican extreme. And Archbishop Dolan, who runs the CFR in the United States, controls both political parties. Did it in 2016. Did it in 2012 with Obama and Romney. Same thing, friend. Same thing. The pendulum never stops in the middle. Barack Obama was used by the liberal Jesuits, to push the pendulum way to the left with the LGBT movement, with Obamacare, illegal immigration, Islamic terrorists coming into our country. People were getting sick of this, weren't we? Americans were getting sick of this, friend. Well, that's what the Jesuits wanted him to do. Push the pendulum as far to the left as you can. Make people sick with what you're doing. And then we'll bring along somebody completely out of the political field. And we'll tell America, we're going to make you great again. And Americans said, oh, wonderful. It was the left, the Jesuits on the left that took the pendulum out, and now it's the Jesuits on the right that control the populist Donald Trump. And Trump is pulling the pendulum back this way. But folk, a pendulum never stops in the middle. It always kicks all the way out here. And that's where Donald Trump is taking America today. From repealing Obamacare, which we saw this week through the House, heading to the Senate, to building a wall between America and Mexico, to angrily opposing the leader of Australia, who had an agreement with Obama to bring thousands of Islamic folk into America, and finally to renouncing LGBT rights by giving it back to the states and not allowing the federal government to have part in that. Trump, like him or not, is creating a chasm among people in America. Folk, I've never seen so many protests in all my life. Have you?
No.
We have chaos, we have division, we have distress. We've got a chasm so deep nobody's going to bridge it. Nobody will bridge it. Division and distress is the order of the day in America. Protests are taking place constantly, stirring the American pot to a fever pitch. Rome